Hey everyone, and thanks for checking out this movie review. So first thing, happy Friday the 13th to everybody. I'm shooting this and uploading this video on Friday, August 13th, 2021. So in the spirit of Friday the 13th, of course, I will be taking a look at one of the Friday the 13th movies and reviewing it today. I've been going through and reviewing all the movies from this horror franchise throughout the month of August, and we're up to the 13th of the month. And we're up to the fifth movie in the franchise, which is Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. As you can see, as part of my 8 pack here, Part 5, The New Beginning. So, yeah, I'll just go ahead and go through the setup and the premise of the movie, the cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will contain spoilers. So, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning is a 1985 American psychological slasher film directed by Danny Steinman and starring John Shepard as Tommy Jarvis, also Corey Feldman as a young Tommy Jarvis, Melanie Kinman as Pam Roberts, Richard Young as Dr. Matthew Letter, Juliet Cummings as Robin Brown, Vernon Washington as George Winter, Shavar Ross as Reggie Winter, Marco St. John as Sheriff Cal Tucker, Carol Lucatel as Ethel Hubbard, and John Robert Dixon as Eddie Kelso. So yeah, basically this movie is set after the events. It's set years after the events of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. The story follows a teenage Tommy Jarvis. I'm not sure how old Tommy Jarvis is. I'm going to guess he's probably around 18 in this movie. He was 12 or so in the fourth movie. So it's probably 5 to 7 years later, let's say, after the events of part four. Um, so Tommy Jarvis is now institutionalized at a halfway house near Crystal Lake because of nightmares of mass murderer Jason Voorhees, who, if you remember, he killed as a 12-year-old at the end of the final chapter. Tommy must face his fears when a new hockey mask wearing murderer initiates another violent killing spree in the area. So, yeah, so basically, the movie starts several years after the death of Jason Voorhees. A teenage Tommy Jarvis is tormented by nightmares of the mass murderer, resulting in his interment and numerous psychiatric hospitals that he's been in. He's eventually transferred to the Pinehurst halfway house managed by Dr. Matt Letter and his assistant Pam Roberts. There, Tommy meets a circle of other teens, including lovers Eddie Kelso and Tina McCarthy, um, the stutter Jake Patterson, the goth Violet Moraine, the serious Robin Brown, the compulsive eater Joey Burns, and the young Reggie Winter, better known as Reggie the Recluse, played by Shavar Ross, whose grandfather works at the facility as the facility's cook. The group is disliked by the neighbor Ethel Hubbard, and Eddie and Tina have made a habit of engaging in sexual intercourse on her property. For this reason, Matt forbids the group from venturing outside the facility's premises. Vic Fadden, another patient in the institute, is gripped by a fit of madness caused by Joey's impatience and brutally kills him with an axe, leading to his arrest. That evening, two greasers are murdered by an unseen assailant after their car breaks down, and a diner waitress and her boyfriend are killed the following night. The sheriff hypothesizes that Jason Voorhees has come back to life and is the perpetrator, perpetrator of these murders, while Tommy himself is rendered as a suspicious party. So that's basically how the movie starts and sort of the setup and the idea of the movie. Um, I'll just kind of go into my thoughts and review, which will contain spoilers. Um, so yeah, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning from 1985, directed by Danny Steinman, who I think was formerly a pornography director, if I'm not sure. And if you watch this movie, it's not a shocker to hear that. I'll get into that a little bit later. I'll start with the pros for this movie. I kind of enjoyed the whodunit aspect of the movie, kind of like the first movie, the first Friday the 13th. You're not really sure what's going on or who's doing it. Of course, in that movie, you get the point of view of the killer. This movie, you won't really get that as much. Maybe trying to think. I don't think you do a whole lot, if at all. So I kind of enjoy that aspect of the who done it part. That does I like that, especially since you don't have spoiler alert. Jason's not the killer. He's not really in this movie. It's kind of an intriguing and engaging idea to do the whole who done it movie. Who's trying to copy Jason um, in the same way and killing people in the same way. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. The Tommy Jarvis storyline makes some sense, and it's pretty interesting with where we pick up with him at this point in his life following the events of the final chapter. I mean, to me, it makes sense that he'd be messed up. He's not just going to be some, you know, well off guy with what happened in the final chapter as a kid. He's obviously going to have long term ramifications of that. And this movie shows that he's really messed up in this movie. He's really quiet. Um, he's got sort of a short fuse, gets in a lot of fights, and I don't know. I know some people don't like John Shepard's portrayal of Tommy Jarvis, and I don't know. I haven't watched part six yet, so I know there's a Tommy Jarvis characters in that one played by a different actor. I actually didn't mind. I thought John Shepard played him pretty well for what they asked him to do in this movie. So he didn't bother me. I mean, of course, Corey Feldman was better, but that's neither here nor there. I thought he was fine as Tommy Jarvis, and like I said, I enjoyed sort of the next step in the storyline with that character in this movie. They did a pretty good job with that. There are lots of kills in this movie that you get to see on screen now. Well, I'll get into that with my negatives, but this movie has the most kills by far of any of the Friday movies up to this point. And I believe even after this point. I guess I'll find out as I go. But yeah, lots of kills, lots of nudity and sex. So I think a friend of mine summed this movie up best. If you like hits and tits, and this is your movie because this movie has lots of both. But lots of kills, pretty decent gore and blood, although not as much as it could have been, or maybe even should have been. I'll get into that with my negatives. This movie still has Good Friday atmosphere, I feel like, with the storm going on at night in the third act, and just sort of that creepy, suspenseful feel and atmosphere that the other Friday movies have had up to this point. So they kind of stay true to it up to that extent. I think there's a pretty good final girl with Melanie Kinman as Pam. I don't think she's as good as I'd still put her above Alice. I'm not a big fan of Alice, but that's probably the only spot she'd go. I don't think she's the final girls from part four. Well, Ginny for sure from part two. I would even say the final girls from part three and four are better um, than Pam, played by Melanie Kingman in this movie. But I thought she was pretty good. Um, she was tough when she had to be, kind of a badass, and she's a really good screamer, which is important in a final girl. Um, appreciate that they tried something different. If you've watched my movie reviews for other series and other movies, you know I'm not a huge fan when they just keep rehashing the same thing and the same ideas. So I give them a lot of credit for doing that, as I have in other series like Friday or Nightmare on Elm Street Part Two and Child's Play, Bride of Chucky, or even Child's Play Part Three, actually. So I give them credit there, especially having a different location, even though it's close to Crystal Lake. It's at a halfway house. It's not at a camp. These aren't camp counselors that they use for the characters. It's just a different kind of setup as well in the movie. It isn't just Jason coming back to life from his wounds at the end of the previous movie and then starts killing camp counselors again. So I give him a lot of credit for that, and I also think this movie has a good amount of comedy to go along with the suspense and atmosphere to the point where it's not as serious as Part Four, but it kind of fits in with the first three movies. It has some sort of cheesy, campy humor to go along with some pretty good atmosphere and suspense. So those are my pros for the most part. I do have some cons. The biggest con is they make it way too obvious in the first act who the killer is. They just spend too much time focusing on him and his reaction. Again, spoiler alert. I'll give you a few seconds. Roy, the ambulance driver, is the killer, and it was his son that got hacked with the axe in the back. the candy bar kid who is a little mentally handicapped and took an axe in the back. And they focus on him so much that when he shows up in an ambulance driver, he's kind of an estranged dad. He hasn't you had a relationship with his son who's in this halfway house and likes candy bars a lot and likes to share them with other people. But they didn't do a good job of setting up the audience in this movie, and that's really the biggest con of this movie. Because if you're not going to have Jason as your killer, and you're going to have somebody else putting on the Jason mask, the hockey mask, you should at least do it in a good way and not a predictable way. And they don't do that in this movie. That's the biggest sin or the biggest con in this movie is they just make it way too obvious. They focus on him way too much at a time when they shouldn't be focusing on him way too much. You know what I'm talking about towards the beginning, the first part of the movie, where Roy the ambulance driver shows up to a certain scene where some person got hacked up, who happens to be his son, as we find out at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. Um, the special effects take a big step back in this movie. It's clear Tom Savini didn't do the special effects. All you have to look at is the fall that the killer takes on the spikes at the end of this movie, where they just decided to be lazy and throw a dummy on the spikes. There's a lot of other things too. Some of the kills and yeah, the special effects just don't hold up well in this movie, in my opinion. Again, they have another dream sequence at the end of this movie. That's kind of a theme in the first five of these movies. I guess they didn't in the final chapter, but in this movie, they had to do the dream sequence again. The end of the film altogether is kind of unsatisfying, and I'm not quite sure the direction they were trying to go. I guess they were trying to make it so that Tommy got pushed over the edge, and he had the Jason mask now, and that he was going to go on a killing spree. I guess. Although the way they do it in these movies, it might just be another dream that we weren't privy to the him waking up from. I just that's so played out at this point. I mean, just stop with the dream sequences, would you please? Maybe that was a big thing back in the early to mid '80s, but I'm just not a fan of it. I don't mind a dream sequence if it's done well, but when you just keep redoing it over and over again, it's just so not effective at this point. Um, the killer not being Jason obviously has to be a con. You just have a guy that's in a hockey mask, and even though the stunt guy or the actor that played Jason didn't do a terrible job, or no, he didn't play Jason, he played the killer replicating Jason, I guess. He didn't do a terrible job, but again, when it's not Jason, it's just that's a con. I'm sorry. It's Jason's the killer in these movies, other than the first one and clearly this one. Um, the characters are a big problem in this movie, especially following part four, where we had the best characters in this franchise so far. These, other than one character that I'm going to bring up here shortly, these characters are not memorable. They're just kind of throwaway characters, and of all the movies so far, they seem like the most throwaway characters. Like they really don't serve a purpose. I mean, at least in some of the earlier movies, where you had teenage camp counselors or teenagers showing up to try to help their traumatized friends, you kind of knew why they were there, basically to smoke pot and have sex and get killed. But these characters here, which are all part of this halfway house, it just doesn't really work. They're not great acting, and the most annoying characters are, of course, the hillbillies in the woods. I don't really know what the point of them was. The only good thing about them is the one good kill. The best kill was the son, I guess, getting his head hacked off as he was riding his bike around, crying to his mom. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the characters in this movie, other than, of course, Reggie the Recluse, played excellently by Shavar Ross. I really liked him. He's a memorable character. He's the one character I remember from this movie. Um, the MPAA once again had stuck their big ass in another horror movie that could have been great and decided, no, we can't have this much blood and gore on the screen. Totally ruined this movie as they have so many others. So yeah, that's not great. Again, the kills were quantity over quality. But again, I'm not going to completely blame the movie for that because the MPAA was the reason that we didn't get to see all the gore and the blood. Um, Overall, this just kind of feels like a throwaway Friday movie, especially when you compare it to the rest of the series. you could skip this movie and go from 4 to 6 and not really have missed much. It just feels like a movie that they rushed out for because these movies have made so much money up to this point and they wanted another money grab. To a certain extent, it does kind of feel like that to rush out another slasher movie with the Friday the 13th name slapped on it. Um, the movie just doesn't have a great flow to it either, particularly compared to some of the earlier movies, especially the final chapter. That just kind of just the flow isn't as great, and there's just some out of place scenes and moments as well, like when Tommy just starts fighting with people. I mean, I know that's supposed to show that he's kind of snapped and he's off his rocker to a certain extent, but I don't know. They just kind of felt like filler scenes to me. Um, there's some other things too that just really didn't make a lot of sense. And using a former porn director like they did with Danny Steinman for this movie, you get a Friday the 13th soft porn movie, which is basically what you have. Now, again, if your big thing is hits and tits, then this is your movie, man. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts overall. It's kind of a hard movie to rate because, first of all, I don't think it's as bad as some people say. I mean, some people have this at the bottom of their ranking. I don't see that at all. Although I will say of the first five movies, it's my least favorite so far. I'll go ahead and make that declaration. Although that being said, I can still put it on and have a bowl of popcorn on a Friday night with a storm outside and still enjoy it enough. I can enjoy the humor. I can enjoy the kills. I can enjoy Reggie the Recluse, the suspense, the atmosphere, sort of the whodunit thing, even though, like I said, they kind of ruined that. It's not really a great movie, but it's an enjoyable and entertaining enough movie. An entertaining enough Friday the 13th movie without Jason. Could have been better, should have been better. But I'm going to go ahead and rate it a 7 out of 10. Uh, yeah, Friday the 13th, Part 5 from 1985, A New Beginning. 7 out of 10 is my rating, guys, for this movie. So go ahead and give me your thoughts. Comment down below. Like this video and hit the little bell to see when my future videos pop up. Reminder bell. And please subscribe to my channel to see future Friday the 13th videos, ranking videos, and other standalone movie reviews. So thank you for watching this video and have a great day. Happy Friday the 13th.